You are listening to the Unsoberly Sober Show. I'm your host, Magnify Maggie. This podcast will turn your perception of going sober upside down. We're going to be working from the inside out to get you that dream life. So make sure you stick around for the end of the episode where I'm going to walk you through our weekly positive pursuit exercise to begin rewiring that beautiful mind, baby. Hello, my free and powerful friends. What is happening? Welcome back to the Unsoberly Sober Show. I'm your host, Maggie Jensen, Magnify Maggie, and I'm so excited because for the next 2 episodes, the next 2 weeks, I have one of my favorite honorary co-hosts with me, Nicky. Hey, girl.
Hey.
And it looks like you just got your hair did. It's so beautiful, bright.
Somewhere soon. Yeah, recently.
Yes, it's so pretty. And I'm really excited about our topic today because we're going to be covering alcohol as we know it as liquid courage, but kind of reverse engineering that to look at inhibitions. You know, we always look at alcohol as being that social lubricant, liquid courage, but when we really examine it and we take a step back, what is it doing in that area of confidence? What is it actually doing? Well, it's really, really good at lowering our inhibitions. And we think about inhibitions as something kind of common, something kind of cultural. But today we're going to dive in so that maybe you become aware of how high your inhibitions are. Some of them might be unnecessary. A lot of them might be just condition limiting beliefs. Some of them might be lack of self-esteem. We're going to be touching on subjects from Maxwell, Maltz, Psycho-Cybernetics, as well as Gabor Mate. Some of my favorites like Bob Proctor, you know, the peeps, the lineup that we usually mention in Unsoberly Sober. But one of the things that I love about Nicky and I having this conversation together is that we both have this background in service industry. And shout out to anybody else who has taken the extensive list of alcohol training courses, alcohol tests. You know, Serve Safe was like every quarter for us, or, you know, even as we move up into management positions, we have to take elevated bar, Serve Safe certifications, things like that. And so in these alcohol service certifications, we learn about one of the warning signs of someone becoming too intoxicated in order to not overserve them is to look out for relaxed inhibitions. Do you remember that part of the test?
Yes. And it's such an interesting one because it's so subjective to every person. But there are signs that you see across people where you're like, oh, okay, they're feeling it. Keep an eye out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think there are like cultural norm healthy inhibitions, right?
Absolutely.
Like we don't go around talking to every person about politics.
Yeah. No, we don't do that.
That was one of the things I remember in the Hooters Serve Safe that was like, if you have a bar guest that starts to talk about politics, you have to start to monitor them. Yeah. Their inhibitions are too relaxed. Yeah. Sex, money, religion. Those are kind of the
hot button topics that we kind of stray away from.
Yeah.
I have an interesting one too. I worked at Buffalo Wild Wings back in the day for a little bit, and we would host fight nights. Lowering inhibitions. We had people who started to think that they were like MMA fighters or that they could, or you would see this kind of almost machismo thing start to hype up in people, and you were just like, okay, what's happening? What's happening? So maybe not a topic, but you would see behaviors start to change, and you're just like, let's slow it down. Let's bring it back to earth.
That is so funny. I didn't even remember that, and I had a flashback. One of the first UFC nights I worked at Hooters, there was an actual brawl where a man threw another man over a wall into a booth.
Yeah.
And that happened probably 2 or 3 times as far as like fisticuffs.
Yeah, yeah.
So, okay, we understand that alcohol is really good at relaxing these inhibitions. And some of these inhibitions are healthy human inhibitions. Like, hey, don't fight people. Hey, don't talk about things that could offend someone. Don't bring something up that could cause conflict when we're in a situation where we're all trying to just have fun. You know, those are healthy inhibitions. Mm-hmm. But what I think is true, I've been going down the mental rabbit hole of this. what I think is really true is that people that struggle with alcohol use specifically, but I think this could also be the case with food, any kind of coping mechanism where we get that dopamine hit and we relax for a moment and we feel a little bit uplifted, we are really inhibited. But not just in those typical societal norm ways, the cultural ways of like, hey, keep yourself in line by not talking about religion, politics, sex, or your money. Keep yourself in line by not aggressively hitting somebody. We have inhibitions that we need to naturally lower from just practicing being ourselves. Can you think of any inhibitions that are outside of those norms for you that like alcohol or food would help with? Because I have a lot.
Oh, so many. Because honestly, most of my life and most of any time in life where I felt like I was drinking to excess or drinking out of the norm, it was purely for, I don't want to say purely, but for the most part, it was for confidence or just a relaxation to the point where I feel like I could be just in a room and not feel uncomfortable in my own skin, whatever was going on. So I was definitely doing a lot of that. And then when it gets a little past the point of the okay, then I'm just like thinking I'm friends with everybody, talk to everybody. And okay, I know we say friendly. I don't mean like that. But, you know, right. we go past a point. So a lot of times it really was just breaking down those barriers simply just to feel okay or even just normal in a room. And then there's a tipping point, and a lot of times we don't find the tipping point and we go over. So that was a big one for me personally, definitely drinking just for comfort.
I think you just took a page out of all of our books. I mean, I felt like you were speaking my experiences too. And what I always thought about in those moments was like, yes, this is giving me confidence, but I wasn't surveying what confidence, like what specific area of confidence was I lacking? And I think everybody's different, but we have some pretty phenomenal common denominators as far as, is the inhibition, I'm worried that people won't like me? Is the inhibition acting to protect you from people's opinions because you're just too sensitive? So let's break down what inhibitions are to kind of open up the floodgates here. An inhibition is simply something that prohibits, that restricts, constricts you from expressing your own authentic self. It's actually something that is restricting your creative mechanism as a human. And I'm pulling directly from chapter 11 of Psycho-Cybernetics here, how to unlock your true personality. And that's what confidence is. Confidence is being able to express your true personality. If you have something on your mind that's not a social taboo like politics or religion, things like that. If you have something on your mind and you feel like this is a good comment, this is a good conversation, this is a good expression of my emotions, you feel confident enough to let that flow through you. But if we are largely inhibited, you can think about that as being almost like a character or personality stutter. You're blocking that flow of just your creative expression.
Right. And I've noticed even in, say, some conversations where maybe you don't want to, like with politics, right? Like you don't want to sit down when everyone's trying to have a good time and then immediately bring up the thing. But even in conversations where it's brought up naturally and you're just having a casual conversation, immediately my brain, me in particular, will go to, well, I don't want to say anything because I don't want to offend someone, even if this is what I believe. And I start to see myself drift back my own beliefs just to keep the peace and comfort of other people. And then that flows through everything. Even if it's just casual conversation and it's about a band or a whatever. And someone's like, I hate them. And I'm like, well, I love them. They're my favorite. I feel like I can't even say something as simple as that. And so it just keeps trickling back to even the most commonplace thing up to the most very, extreme.
Yeah.
And it just feels, I feel me oppressing myself even more every time I do it because I'm just going to shove her back down because we don't want to ruffle feathers.
Yeah.
We don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. We don't want anyone to be upset. And I just say it's an interesting thing. And then when drinking comes into play or anything that lowers my inhibitions, I just get a little more brave. But I don't always love the level of brave it takes me to. And I don't really want that to be the thing that makes me brave.
Yeah.
I just want people to know, like, oh, this is what Nicky feels and thinks because she's a human and she's allowed to think and feel that way.
Right. How we do one thing is how we do everything, right? So on the small scale of like the band to the big scale of politics or religion or whatever that conversation is, if we're constantly negotiating our own beliefs and how we communicate and express those, thinking, what will everybody else think about me? Then we are exhibiting symptoms of very, very extreme inhibitions. And it's this tug of war of, do I fight to fit in with everybody, or can I express myself and still belong? Now, I do think that a large part of this conversation is watch who you spend your time with. Be careful and curate your inner circle so that they do love you for who you are. But in order for that to happen, you have to show them who you really are.
Right.
So there's a little groundwork that needs to be done.
Right.
You have to be yourself in order to make those relationships, or else if you're faking and pretending to be someone else, and then you get that relationship, you're going to feel like you always have to fight to be that inauthentic person. So I kind of say all that to bring about the fact, just like Nicky was just saying, like alcohol can take you to that point where now you don't give a fuck and you're going to say whatever is on your mind. And a lot of times we wish that we could have reeled that in, but there is a healthy balance. There's a healthy middle point. And I want us to think about this. And if you're just listening, I'm closing my eyes. I don't know. Oh, Nicky's closing her eyes now. I want you to think about a time when you had maybe one drink, maybe two drinks, and all of a sudden you feel these relaxed inhibitions. And those things that you wanted to talk about before that you were too afraid of, now you feel that courage to bring it up. What are those things? What are those inclinations that once you have that little buzz, that little liquid courage going, what are those things that now all of a sudden you feel free? You feel like you are in flow to express your authentic character, personality, thoughts, ideas, maybe even memories, maybe sharing memories, sharing heartache, sharing all of these things. Because isn't it funny that with that one or two drinks, nothing changes. Literally nothing changes. We could be sitting here and we could pour a drink, and after one, all of a sudden we could get a little bit more chatty. But nothing changed in the room. Nothing changed about our setting. Think about this at a bar. Think about this at, dinner, wherever you're at. Nothing changed outside of you. Nothing changed with the other person other than they're also maybe imbibing. Sometimes not, though. Nothing changed except for your internal mechanisms of inhibitors. So I was brainstorming this over the past few weeks and thinking, if I were to have a cocktail, what is it that comes up? And it's like these compliments that I wanted to give to people that I was afraid, well, if I give them this compliment, will they think I'm sucking up to them? Well, I have this limiting belief that people think that if I'm nice to them, that it's not real.
Right.
Well, then maybe if I had a drink, I would have the confidence, the lowered inhibitions to bring up something that this person did that I perceived as being hurtful. Well, without that liquid courage, so to say, my inhibitions were keeping me from expressing my authentic emotions. So where in our life have we learned to not be able to express these things? And if we can imagine kind of like, oh, well, I'm not drinking, but I'm out at dinner. I'm feeling very inhibited. It's almost like, could you pretend that you had a drink? And what would you be talking about? What would you literally be saying and opening up your heart with?
And I feel like I don't know about anyone else, but I was raised in a military family, and there was a large portion of time where you're more to be seen and not heard. Mm-hmm. And so I think as I got older, I was never comfortable in silence, even though that's how it kind of used to be. Mm-hmm. And then having a drink or 2 or 3, it just allowed even just conversation to flow easily. And then when you would notice the reaction, I think also reactions, like people's reaction, like telling the beautiful woman at the bar, like, oh my God, girl, you are stunning.
You are just a sight.
Yes. Yeah. And sometimes you get a really positive reaction, like, oh my God, thank you so much. But then sometimes you get like, okay, Mm-hmm. And when when you've had 1 or 2, the okay doesn't feel as painful and you can keep doing it. Now, when you haven't had anything, it kind of feels like it's a sting.
What did I do?
And then it teaches you to like keep back anything that you would want to say to someone. Mm-hmm. So I think it's like a multifaceted thing going on there. Just potentially how you were raised and just not feeling comfortable in conversation or not feeling comfortable without conversation. And then also reactions definitely teach you to temper your conversation.
I love that example, like everything you just said, because first off, our inhibitions are conditioned into us as children. So if you think about a baby, everybody loves babies. Like, why are we so drawn to babies? Like, literally, I feel like a magnetism. Even if I don't have baby fever, if I see a baby, I'm just like, oh, we do baby. It's human. It's because the baby is not inhibited. The baby is fully authentic. The baby's going to cry when it wants to cry. It's going to laugh. And when it laughs, you know that it's really funny because they're not pretending to laugh. They're really laughing. When the baby is throwing a tantrum, hey, it's authentically feeling anger or fear right now. So we aren't born with these inhibitions. They're conditioned into us. And so just like you said, to be seen, not heard, probably conditioned you to make yourself feel very small. And so with the alcohol, I can take up space. I can express my feelings authentically. I can express my authentic desires. I can be me. I can talk to people in the way that I wish to talk to them. But on the other hand, you mentioned the feedback that we get. If that woman at the bar were like, oh, thank you. You look great too. Or, I just got this dress from this place, opening up a nice conversation, our brain is going to say, oh, well, that was good. Mm-hmm. We did good. Mm-hmm. If maybe that person met us with a little bit of negative feedback, that could cause our whole system to stutter. Yeah. And negative feedback is meant to help us correct course. But if we've been conditioned that negativity affirms like our lack of value, then negative feedback will stop us in our tracks. Right. We're just going to stall out. We're not going to correct course and make adjustments and be like learning what the successful maneuver would be. That negative feedback would be like paralysis.
Yes. It's basically like you just like, well, F you too. But then it's hard because you try to tell yourself, well, I don't want to be that person who like takes that and then makes that my personality. It's like if I give anyone a compliment, they're just going to be kind of negative about it because that's not the case. But it's so hard to combat when you've already experienced something like that. And not even just if you're giving someone a compliment. If you're a girl at a bar and you have a drink to like hit on a guy that you think is attractive and they are like, nah, I'm good. Then you're like, oh, okay, never going to do that again.
Yeah.
It's so many other things that like the reactions really start to set your personality almost on the way that you do things or don't do things. Mm-hmm. And it's the drinks that kind of, ease that tension, and then finding that balance can be really hard.
Yeah, I think one of the main parts about finding the balance is realizing like, no matter what my authentic intent is, I can't control how this person responds. Yeah. And that took a lot of practice without alcohol for me. Because I did see, like you said, like sometimes if I were drinking and I gave a compliment or whatever the case, I got a positive feedback kind of encounter and I got a negative feedback encounter while intoxicated. I could let go the negative thing. Yeah. But if I didn't have alcohol in the beginning, I took it very personally.
Because the response is the same. Your perception of the response, however, is different, whether you're sober or not sober.
Girl,
and,
yeah.
And then how to slough it off, because it's not as important in one way, and it might be really important if you're fully coherent and you're like, wow, that didn't feel good. So for sure, I guess less so the reaction and more the perception of the reaction.
Yep. Yeah. It's not what happens. It's how we feel about what happens. It's our perception of what happens. And it took practice. And I'm saying this as like an indicator that you can practice this as well, as far as expressing what you naturally want to express, not just in a bar setting, but at work, with your family, around the dinner table, maybe with a family member that you're trying to cultivate a better relationship with. Being yourself is possible, and it's going to take practice. And there might be a few of those punches in the gut at first where you see that no matter how authentic and sweet and well-intended your communication style is, it's up to somebody else to have their own reaction, their own response, and you can't control that. We talked about that a few episodes. It's been maybe 6-7 episodes ago about giving away something every day, giving a compliment even, and recognizing that you can't control whether somebody accepts that compliment. But just seeing yourself as like, hey, even if I hit on this dude or I complimented this girl trying to make a new friend and that was met with negative feedback, at least I put it out there. At least I'm practicing being myself without the social lubricant. And every time you practice that, you give your soul, your authentic desires, a voice, a little bit louder of a voice. And with practice, they start to show up. And what happens over time when you start to really train your inhibitions to naturally lower is you take away the power from any of your coping mechanisms. If I have a drink now, it's no longer helping me make friends. It's no longer helping me express my authentic feelings because I've learned how to do that without alcohol. So when I have it, it's not really doing much. And I think anybody that's been in their sober journey where they've learned this, they will say the same. When I have it, it's just not the same. It's because we took the function away. We learned how to fill that function ourselves. And I think one of the best ways to do that is to just imagine going to a Thanksgiving dinner, going to a Christmas party. If I were drinking, what would I be talking about? I'm just going to do that. And you're not going to go overboard. You're not going to get to that arena of life where you're like, shit, I was too uninhibited. Yeah. I was too relaxed.
She made Thanksgiving dinner messy.
Oh.
So she can do that.
Yes.
Which I have to say, you are, for anyone who knows Maggie personally or even listens to her here, you are a prime example of a person. Anytime I've been together, you are so giving with like your love and adoration for people, for anything that they do. You look beautiful today. I saw you on this thing and you were so eloquent and you spoke so well. The compliments that you give away, and they feel so authentic. And I can tell that it's not something probably at one point in time was natural, because I know you and I know how you were raised and I know things about your family, and that was not the case. And you have taught yourself, but now it's just this thing where like, when I get a Maggie compliment, I'm like, fuck yeah. Do I have to say, can I say fuck?
Yeah.
Okay. So fuck yeah. I said it and then I asked, I don't know. It's just one of those things where like, I know that that's something you have taught yourself, but now it's such an authentic part of you that it makes me feel like, it reminds me that even if I don't always get a good reaction, like I try to be that person, because I really do I think we all think for some reason that the world has kind of just, people aren't nice anymore.
Yeah.
And so when one person gives a compliment and it just feels good, or even if you get a bad reaction, like there's still something inside of you that makes your heart swell just a little bit. 'Cause you're like, okay, I feel like I did a good thing just then, even if they didn't love it. Mm-hmm. There's something that inside of you that still feels good.
Well, thank you for saying that. I honestly had to fight back tears because I don't know, a part of me I think felt really seen when you said that, because I didn't really give myself credit for how much I really did practice that.
Yeah.
That was actually one of my first social games that I gave myself was like, be interested in other people. Like, take the limelight off of myself, because I didn't want to tell people whether or not I had a cocktail in my cup.
Yeah.
You know, when we were like having quiet quarantine parties back in 2020 and I was like very freshly sober, if I went to somebody's house, I didn't want them to be like, so I heard you're sober. I was like, how can I just like be interested in them?
Right.
And at first it didn't feel like I was interested in them.
Yeah.
But over time it really has become like, the best way for me to feel good is to focus on other people,
right,
and help other people feel good. And that intrinsically, you know, as humans, we're interdependent. That's what makes our spirit feel good. So thank you for noticing that.
Absolutely. I think you have a lot of wonderful things about you, but that definitely is one that I just think a lot of people haven't mastered. I've never met anyone who does it quite like you.
Aww.
And so it's just one of those things where I hope that, you know, and it really, I think makes a lot of people feel good. But if no one else, I know for me, it's helped me immensely in the years of our friendship. So
I love you.
Me too, girl.
But something else you said that I think was something that I trained my mind to believe. And this is going back to like science of success, laws of achievement type of literature, which is, the universe will always give back what you give. It doesn't have to come from that person, right? So if I give somebody a compliment, like you mentioned, there's some part of me that no matter what the response is, I feel good that I tried. I feel good that I had a good heart and that I noticed them and that I was interested in them and that I was able to fully express that. So even if they react poorly, I can slough that off and I can say, well, I gave today. Maybe down the line, they'll think back on that and it'll help them feel good. But I can't help that right now they're in a negative place. That's going to come back to me from somewhere though. And I feel like, you know, we could say luck. We could say manifestation. We could use all of these words where it's like, I feel like I have gotten returns on those kind of compliments without expectation. Me just complimenting somebody because it starts conversation. It's also making somebody else feel good, which makes me feel good. Icebreakers, things like that. Like, it's kind of a social hack that also makes your heart feel good. Yeah. So
without having to lower your inhibitions somehow,
yes.
Which is a nice thing to have in your hip pocket, because it's so uncomfortable going to any setting with any amount of people and being the one person who just feels like, okay, I have to have a drink to feel comfort in this situation. It shouldn't have to feel like that, especially when it's with your friends or people you love or your family. And I know families can be difficult. I know friends can be difficult, but it's nice to find another way.
Yeah. I think that's an interesting paradigm because a lot of people have that. I have to have a drink to be relaxed here. No, you don't. You have to practice expressing yourself naturally without alcohol, or else you're always going to rely on it. And there's always going to be scenarios where you make Thanksgiving dinner real messy. I know that was definitely my whole story. Like Christmas Eve, forget about it. Yeah. And so bursting that paradigm, if I didn't have a drink to relax, how could I relax myself? Honestly, I know it's going to sound lame. It's not going to give you the dopamine hit. It's not going to make you feel giddy, but it is going to help practicing talking without alcohol. Like literally breath work, go do a workout before you go to the family dinner, go do a walk, go get yourself in a high vibe through exercise, through doing things throughout the day that make yourself feel proud of yourself. So when you walk in, you're already like vibrant and you don't need to relax because you're fully in your own vibe. You're like, I'm feeling myself. So I'm interested in other people and I'm interested in what's going on. I think something else that really helped me along the way was like to give myself a mission. And we've talked about this. Like when we go to like Angie's big parties, I'm like, as soon as I show up, I'm like, what can I help with? Yeah. And along the way, that helps me see things to talk about, things to naturally give ideas towards, hey, I know you wanted to set the things like this, but I could help you do it like this. And that makes me feel good. So then now I have more things to talk about. I'm relaxed because I have a little mission in the social environment. And it takes the focus off of me trying to be so perfect. or whatever that thing is.
That you're just trying to help, or you have something going on, you're something to do with your hands.
Yeah, literally, you kind of have to have something to do with your hands. And Rob's doing the movement too. Like, find something, whatever it is, find something to do with your hands, because if it's, especially in a group of friends that do like to drink, or maybe your family does like to drink, that's their activity. That's what they're doing with their hands. So like, if you're not going to do that, you gotta replace it with something that's going to be entertaining, something that's going to be even fueling your identity of like, hey, I belong here. Like, look at me, I'm helping set up the dinner, or I'm helping set the table, things like that. So I want to talk about the kind of the 5, I would say, characteristics or 5 top indicators that you are very inhibited. And these aren't from a book. These are from my own kind of case studies with clients, my own kind of observations from myself, but also with my clients who I've gotten to know on such a deep level, what it is that alcohol's doing for them. And we've talked about a few of these personality aspects, but I want to talk about them in a way of connecting the inhibition. We just talked about one, perfectionism. So perfectionism is not striving to be perfect, but it's actually striving to figure out what you're doing wrong and then berating yourself over it. Perfectionism is a group of a lot of inhibitors. It's basically being overly careful. But what are we being overly careful about? Do you have any ideas? I have some.
I mean, for me, I would say probably being careful about how I'm making other people feel.
Can I pause?
Yes.
Are we responsible for how we make other people feel?
I'm going to go with no is the right answer.
Right. But in a way we are, because I could walk around and be like, you're an asshole, you're ugly, but you shouldn't, like, I'm not responsible for your, like, there's a difference between that being malicious and then like being yourself and then being worried about what people think about you. So yes, go on.
Definitely just, I don't know. I lost my train of thought.
I know I interrupted you. So if we are like being overly careful, what are we being overly careful about? I think I'm in the same boat. Like, I was overly careful because I didn't want people to think I was weird.
Yeah.
And another word that always came up for me, and this was something that I don't think Eric ever meant to program me to believe about myself, but as a kid, anytime I opened my mouth, my brother would say, "You're so stupid." And so growing up, I always had this overly careful mannerism to make sure nobody thought I was stupid. Nobody thought I was dumb. Yeah. And so when I would talk, I would filter so carefully. If I say it like this, will people think I'm dumb?
Yeah.
Will people think I'm stupid? Yeah. And the truth of the matter is, I don't really care because I know that I'm not stupid, right? So that's an example. Yeah. I think there's a good way to do a little bit of shadow work. Nikki, let me know if you have anything come up here. What are you afraid of if you're not perfect? Rob, if you have anything too. What are you afraid of if you're not perfect?
I know it's always the fear that people aren't going to like me, or people are going to tell other people that something is wrong with me, or now in life, and even before with my family, it was gonna make a negative light for them. Now with my husband, Judd,
like your family reputation,
right? It would be like, oh well, Judd's married to her and something's wrong with her. So I think it was like fully the perception of other people and what it would do, what I would look like if I'm not like whatever the case scenario calls for. It's almost like you have to be a little bit of a chameleon sometimes to like make sure you fit the right circumstance. But for sure, it's definitely, people would think that, and then it would reflect negatively on like my family or my husband or my friends. And I would have to be that person someone would have to apologize for, or, you know.
And I'm sure that actually really never happened. I'm sure people never had to apologize for you. I'm sure Judd, he would fight somebody if they made him feel like he needed to apologize for you.
Yeah.
So like a lot of these fears are so bonkers, but they're heavy and we feel the weight of the world on our shoulders when we start to think about it. And when I start to think, what if I'm not perfect? What does that mean? And you can kind of go down this rabbit hole. For you, it sounds like very similar. It's like, instead of being self-conscious, I'm others conscious. Like I'm conscious of what other people may or may not think about me.
Yeah.
If I'm not perfect, well, that means I'm not good enough. If I'm not good enough, what does that mean? Nobody will love me. Everybody's different. You're going to get different answers than me, maybe. When you do this, close your eyes. If I'm not perfect, what does that mean? First statement that comes to your mind. It's going to give you the awareness of what your most deep core wounds are. I'm not good enough. I'm not important enough. No one will love me. There's 5 or 6 basically core wounds that everybody has that all of our inhibitions stem from, which are those. I'm not good enough. I'm not important. No one will love me. I'm a failure. My life will always end in pain. There's one more. It's not coming to my head right now, but they kind of all go back to these.
Right.
And those are learned in childhood. Mm-hmm. So being perfect all the time is impossible. In fact, as humans, we don't like perfect people. Don't we like people who are a little...
They're sus for sure.
Yeah.
Like, people that are too perfect, I'm like, what kind of skeletons you got in your closet?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They don't exist. And the people that are pretending to be perfect, they got probably the most stuff to work on.
Yeah.
We as humans, we are attracted to people who are relatable, that have real life problems, that are going through real life things, because those real life things are expanding us and making us more aware. So be imperfect. Don't be striving for perfectionism, because that's probably something that's leading you to want to drink. Rob, what do you got?
I got it. Can you hear me?
No, do it again. He said, can you hear me? Keep tapping. I heard it earlier.
That's it.
Here I am. Sorry, engineering. Okay, so I think, the pressure to be perfect. And
the pressure to be perfect.
And, you know what I mean? I feel like a lot of that comes from our own pressure or standards that we put on ourselves. And then we add all the stress. It's like we're just doing this shit to ourselves, basically.
Yeah.
And we've completely made it up.
Yeah.
Like most of the time, it's not anything that anyone's ever said or done. It's completely arbitrary to the things that have happened in life. That's like, that's what it means to be perfect. But like, that all looks different for everyone else. And I'm striving for this perfection that I've made in my own head, when other people could look at what I'm doing and be like, oh God, that girl is.
Yeah. Isn't everybody's definition of perfect different anyway? So
Absolutely.
How are you ever going to be perfect for everybody?
Right.
That's so funny.
Right.
That's a good thought. That reminds me also of a quote. It's not what I think of me. It's not what you think of me. It's what I think you think of me. Maybe you could just pretend and think that everybody really likes you. And that could relax your inhibitions, instead of thinking that everyone else thinks that you're a loser or whatever it might be. Yeah. So, okay, perfectionism. Next up, I've mentioned before, I am a recovering people pleaser. And I think people pleasing was one of the top things on my list of indicators that were causing inhibition, because people pleasing is like basically listening to your conscience all the time. I should do this for this person. I should do this for this person, to keep you in line, right? Your conscience is there saying, oh, this person would like you better if you act like this, or you did this for them, or, don't ever say no. Don't ever disagree with them. If they ask you if you like a band and you've never heard of it, you better say you love that band. Right. Like basically just being inauthentic as fuck to be able to keep conversation going and make this person think that I'm interesting, right? So people pleasing was basically my attempt to keep myself in line with the expectations of others. Again, what I thought they wanted of me. But people pleasing is fucking exhausting.
Yes, so exhausting.
And that's another area of attachment versus authenticity, where you're going to be fighting to fit in, chameleoning, like you said, versus saying and expressing what's on your heart and mind, and saying, I'm okay if people don't agree with me.
Right. going back to service industry days, right? I feel as though, and I don't know, this is just me. I feel like I'm alone in this boat.
Maybe not.
Right. And maybe it might resonate with someone. I feel as though my voice is very masculine. Like I think I sound masculine, and I don't know why. I think it was said to me one time years ago, and I was like, oh. And so I had a service industry voice. So when I would go up to a table and I'd be like, hi, welcome to Buffalo Wild Wings. What can I get you today? And like, I would automatically take my voice up 2 octaves.
Wow.
Because I wanted to ensure that the people I was speaking to would perceive me as like feminine. It would make them more comfortable because I felt like I was an opposing figure. And then I had this like what I felt like was a really gruff voice, which I know it's not, but something has told me that. And so I would try so hard to put that level of comfort on someone else and raise my voice 2 octaves. And then when people would hear me talk outside of that, if they've never heard me outside of work, they'd be like,
wait, who?
Or like the first time Judd heard me answer a phone call, he was like, what voice is that? I was like, oh, that's Nicky's people-pleasing voice, basically. Yeah. And he was like, okay. So just one small example of like the level of discomfort that I personally took myself to just to ensure that like other people felt a level of comfort.
And that you were in line with what other people expected you.
Right.
Other people expect me to have this very feminine, soft voice and energy. And so I'm going to change myself in order to appease what I think they want.
Yeah.
Maybe some people even thought like, wow, she has a really high-pitched voice. I wish she wasn't so feminine sounding.
Right. Because that's really annoying.
Literally, you don't know what people are thinking.
Right.
It's called code switching.
Code? What do you mean? Say more.
It's like switching to your environment.
That makes sense.
Personality to your environment. I think that's code switching.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Different races do it.
Yeah.
I use chameleoning, but code switching sounds like actually words. Yeah. Chameleoning, I don't think it's a word, but code switching. Interesting. So stop code switching. Yeah. Be yourself. Be yourself, turkey. So that you can actually practice lowering those inhibitions naturally. Otherwise, you're going to be going through your day, hi guys, talking in a way that other people expect. And then guess what? At the end of the day, you're going to want something to escape all of that pretending, all of that like high cortisol alert. Like, am I acting in the way that everybody else is going to be pleased with me for? Oh my God, now I need that relax. I need that reprieve, that lower of the inhibition so I can talk like I need to talk, you know?
Right. Because it's exhausting.
Yeah, it's exhausting to wear a mask, to pretend.
Right.
And so you're going to look for that thing that helps you not wear the mask and be yourself.
Right.
Okay. Next one actually came from a listener for the Sober October live streams because I kind of dry ran this topic and it seemed to be really helpful. One of the comments that I had was from a listener that said that it was a very helpful topic, but they find themselves very uptight and that they couldn't let loose. They didn't even find other people interesting. And as I thought about that, I was like, yeah, I've had several clients that we never like necessarily articulated that. We worked on it, but not without the awareness of it being like a complete restriction of your own interest towards other people and your expression of that. So there's kind of 2 areas, I think, with being like uptight and not being able to let loose. Are you around people that you can let loose around? Or are you around bullies who are going to make fun of you?
Right.
Do you need to take stock of your circle? If you look at your circle and you're like, well, other people are letting loose without alcohol. Other people can be silly. Other people are interested in my social circle. And it's just me that is walking on eggshells. Then that's probably an indicator that you have really heightened inhibitions. And what I found with looking at my own uptightness or my own, especially in the beginning, I felt like I was like a soldier at attention at any social gathering. I was so uptight. People would talk to me and I wasn't even tracking what they were talking about. I wasn't interested in what they were saying because I was only in my head about this is boring. I don't know if I'm acting right. I don't know if I kind of loosen up. And I like to do this now, the little wavy hands. Like this is me like letting out my uptight energy.
Yeah.
Like if I did this in public, would people judge me? Would people like think I'm silly? But then once I had a drink, I don't give a fuck. I'm up on the karaoke bar stand. I am like dancing. Yeah. So like, can you do that with your social circle without alcohol?
Right.
And if you can, practice that.
Yeah.
And make sure that, this is an Earl Nightingale quote, the world is only interesting to people who are interested. So do your best to go out there and be interested in life. Just like the compliments that I started to practice, like the little social skills, literally, that you have to practice so that you relax that uptightedness. Sing karaoke in your house. This is actually something I love to do because I got my karaoke machine. Sing karaoke in your house by yourself to practice. Let your body just move. Your body wants to be free. Your body and character and your personality want to flow. And all of those things flow when we're dancing, a very human experience that goes back thousands and thousands and thousands of years. It's unnatural to not be able to dance without alcohol. If you can't dance without alcohol, practice by yourself to start, and then practice with your best friends. If you can't sing in the car with friends, sing in the car by yourself. Let these things start to flow through. So that's let loose uptightness. Shutting down was basically my whole MO because, so this is number 4, because I used alcohol to express my feelings, not necessarily the good feelings. Every once in a while, yes, it was the compliment that I wanted to give, but basically what happened, and I've shared this before, is half of my family, if my mom was drunk, we didn't talk about it. When my brother Eric passed away, we didn't talk about it. We took down his pictures. I was never taught in that house how to literally sit down next to somebody and say, I had a hard day. We just thought, if we don't talk about it, it never happened, and we can pretend that everything is cloud 9. So I was taught to pretend instead of express anger, sadness, loneliness, things of that nature. So when I started to drink, this was probably the main function in the beginning, was now I felt the confidence, the relaxed inhibitions, these inhibitions that had been conditioned so heavily in me that we don't talk about hard things. Once I had those drinks, I could sit next to a complete stranger, or there were times I yelled at my grandpa, the general, because I was drunk. And I was like, you never let us talk about Eric. You never talked about mom being a drunk. I would have never done that without drinking. But with alcohol, all of a sudden the floodgates were open. So do you have inhibitions around expressing hard conversations, hard feelings? And if you do, why? What do you think will happen if you talk about sadness? What do you think will happen if you talk about anger? Is it going to make somebody else angry? I know for me with my grandpa, it was like, we don't talk about it because if I bring Eric up, my grandpa's going to start bawling, and he was a grown man, and that was really hard to see. But again, that was me as a child learning that I'm responsible for this 70-year-old man's emotions. If I brought up my brother to my mom or her drinking, she would just get angry, rage-filled. So I'm responsible for her emotions. So this creates that conditioning that if I say what I need to say, I'm going to upset other people, and that's my fault. Right. So you have to get comfortable with pissing people off.
Right. Because it's not fair that you have to lock away your emotions just for keep going back to this, the comfort level of other people.
Yeah.
That you don't get to have, literally don't get to have emotions.
Yeah.
Or don't get to express them freely anywhere. And then as you grow up, that all just turns back onto self-inflicted things.
Yeah. Man, you said that, and it was like all these times where I could have asked for help, I could have expressed my feelings, but I would just suppress that because I thought I had to handle those on my own. No wonder I wanted to go to the bar after every hard situation because I wasn't able to express. I just pretended in that hard situation that everything was fine. Ooh, can you imagine the uptightedness that would cause?
So you could find it in the bottom of a bottle.
Yep.
I mean, it was just it's always the easiest way of finding it through food, through alcohol, through any other thing, for sure. Because you couldn't trust other people. So you had to find the thing that wasn't going to talk back or get upset or, you know.
Yeah. And the thing that's going to help you actually release those. Like think about triggers. Like if you're harboring a lot of anger, sadness, you're probably going to have a lot of triggers. That's like explosive material inside of you. It's explosive because you don't let yourself express it. And that's that shutting down effect. Like I would literally, and sometimes this still happens. Brian brings up a hard conversation and he'll see me just like slump and my eyes start to stare off into the distance. And he's like, Maggie, are you here? We're not fighting. We're fine. We're just having an adult conversation. I'm like, I don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yes, I do.
Yeah.
I do. I've practiced. I know that whatever I say, you're not going to abandon me from what I say. Whatever I say, even if you're angry, you're not going to leave me. And those are all of those fears that cause me to shut down and disassociate. So that could be something that is possibly a root cause of your drinking. You're using it to express those emotions and help you feel better when you need to dissociate, when you think you need to disassociate. Okay, number 5, stress. And I think this is kind of a root cause and a result of inhibitions that are just out of proportion, unnecessary inhibitions, lack of healthy outlet. So stress is energy. It's suppressed anxiety, suppressed fear, usually imagined, usually, even if it is like life circumstances popping up that are difficult, it's usually our perception of, I don't got this. I don't know how to handle this. This is going to be catastrophic. My world is crumbling. It's a perception brought about by inhibited expression. So if something happened where by all means we could cause it stress, a layoff, let's say, that's like unfair life circumstance that we would probably all of us be stressed out by.
Absolutely.
If we had inhibitions that kept us from going home and telling our spouse, I'm sad that I lost my position, and we stifled the expression of that literal fear, anxiety. I'm talking physicality here. We don't go do exercise. We don't go take a walk. We don't breathe it out. We are literally just going to lock it up inside of us. Energy needs to be put in motion, especially stressful energy. We need to get it out. Otherwise, we're going to carry it through every circumstance of our life, and it's going to shade even the best times as stressful. Yeah. And so many of us turn to alcohol to alleviate the stress, but it actually heightens it.
Right.
Through the anxiety. We talk about anxiety.
A lot. Well, because you feel like, I know for me, when I'm so stressed, my body almost hums. And I can feel the energy pulsing off of me. And you hear it all the time. People will be like, I'm going to go home and have a drink. I'm going to go to the bar because I'm just so stressed out. But for me, drinking, and if I drink to any amount of excess, the anxiety sets in and I am 10 times more stressed than I was before.
Yeah.
So it has really been reminding myself of that before I say go have a glass of wine or whatever when I get home to de-stress. And trying to find a way to get that like actual pulsing energy out of my body instead of doing the things that I would normally do. Go eat something, you know, go whatever it would be, for sure.
Yeah, I think it took my brain a long time to see what you just said of like, if you have the drink or whatever helps you from the outside handle stress, it's just going to prolong it.
Right.
So in this moment, I have a choice. I can either do something hard that makes this easier in the long run, or I can do something really easy and maybe even fun.
Right.
That makes it hard in the long run.
Right. Because it's really just putting it in that little box. But as soon as the box has sobered up, that box is going to pop wide open.
Yeah.
And then you're probably going to feel, I would bet 9 times out of 10, you're going to feel worse than you did before.
I never felt better. Yeah. I would say 10 out of 10. Like,
yeah, you're probably right. I was trying to be nice, but 10 out of 10.
No, you're right. Like,
worse.
we're trying not to speak in absolutes, but
right.
I don't remember one time, and this is a very common sober quote. Like, I don't remember one time waking up being like, dang, I'm so happy I drank last night. Especially in a stressful state. now that's the main thing that keeps me from craving alcohol in a stressful state is like, literally, I don't want this to carry into tomorrow.
Right.
If I drink, it's going to carry this into tomorrow. So let me go for a walk. Our culture has kind of lost the connection. I think we're starting to wise up to this with all of the good doctors and influencers out there talking about this, but like the mind-body connection when it comes to stress, literally you have to, like you mentioned, it's like a buzz of stress, that high cortisol. You have to send that out into some sort of physicality.
Yeah.
We talked about this with Psycho-Cybernetics too, where Maxwell Maltz talks about explosive push-ups. He talks about punching bags, kickboxing, things that like mimic the stress energy, explode it out of you, get it out of you. Just like we talk about explosive material of triggers inside of you. If you can match that explosive material with explosive movement, you're going to feel so much better. And you're going to, instead of prolonging the stress and keeping those inhibitors to act at all times, hey, if you're stressed, that just means put your walls up more, keep your guard up. If you start to train that, you start to train that out of yourself when you actually practice the physicality aspect of lowering your inhibitions of stress in that way. So those are the 5 things that I've noticed, kind of the top 5 indicators that somebody has very heightened inhibitions, unnatural high inhibitions that they're using alcohol for: perfectionism, people pleasing, the inability to let loose, uptightedness, shutting down, and stress in general. So we are closing out this week with our weekly exercise. I want you to do what I mentioned kind of towards the beginning of this training is before you go to Thanksgiving dinner, before you go to the holiday party for your work, I want you to imagine, sit down and visualize, when I have just one drink, what is it that I talk about? What is it that I do with my body physically? Where am I going in the room? What am I drawn to? What do I want to tell people when I have this one drink, when I just have that one spark of lowered inhibitions? And then go in there alcohol-free and pretend your ass off. And guess what? Most people aren't going to know that you're not drinking. You're just going to be having fun, being playful, pretending that you have a little buzz without one. And here's the thing, your mind doesn't know what's true or what's false. If you're imagining it, it's like, okay, cool. So there have been times where I imagine that I have whatever is in my hand is alcoholic, and my mind feels at ease because I've connected this thing in my hand with lowered inhibitions, feeling more relaxed. So if I just say, hey, this is a cocktail, sometimes it's grape juice in a fancy cup. If I can imagine that, then my body says, oh, okay, we're safe here. Yeah. We have our liquid courage. We're okay to compliment the girl or talk to the guy or tell somebody about my dreams that I'm working on. All of our inhibitions, they're really there. At some point, they kept us safe. They kept us protected, but we're grown-ass adults. We're trying to be our authentic selves, and they have no room here anymore. And I think as you practice naturally lowering your inhibitions, you're going to really see that you do not have a function for alcohol anymore. And that's where it's kind of like, take it or leave it. I don't need it. Maybe a nice addition every once in a while, but I can honestly live the rest of my life without it because I'm a whole, complete human. Any last words, Nikki, before we head out for this week?
No, I love this episode. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. She had relaxed inhibitions naturally today because she did not know she was recording. And I put her on the spot. And it was so beautiful. And let me say, your voice is calming, peaceful. It doesn't sound masculine. Even if it did sound masculine, whatever it is, it's perfect.
Not that that would be a problem. I think it was just one of those things where growing up, you want to be feminine for whatever reason, or, just one of those things. But I know now that, I have this, I already have a nice service industry voice and I don't need to change it or bring it up several octaves and sound like a 12-year-old girl for whatever reason. I felt like that was necessary.
Well, one night I'm just going to make you speak in your service industry voice all night long. It's going to be very fun.
Gets a little husky sometimes. John's like, what, operator? And I was like, ha ha ha.
Oh, well, I had had so much fun. Nikki's going to be with us on our next week's episode as well. So stay tuned. We're having a lot of fun just hanging out and having these fun, kind of lighthearted conversations, although touching on deep points. Let us know what you think in the comments of this episode. Email me, reach out on Instagram. Let me know your takeaways, questions, insights. Do you have a character aspect outside of people pleasing, perfectionism, the ones we went through today, where inhibitions are unnaturally heightened? Let me know. Reach out. I'd love to talk about it. I'd love to share with you. Until next time, remember that it all goes down in your mind. Think different to drink different, or never again. You got this, my free and powerful badass. It means the entire world to me that you have been here with me, letting me share my experiences and hopefully helping open your eyes to a bright, beautiful life ahead of you as well. So if you are loving this show, please, please, please subscribe, like, comment, and especially share this with somebody that might be in need. Please help get the word out. Word of mouth is so important. And I know that you're somebody special who can help me in this mission for thinking differently in order to drink differently or never again. Make sure you reach out if you have any questions you want discussed on the podcast. I'm here for it. So I'll talk to you soon. Signing out, Magnify Maggie.